The mission is simple: to help high achievers naturally eliminate emotional and physical obstacles so they can optimize their life for higher achievement. Welcome. You have just entered the Genesis Zone. Good day and welcome to the Genesis Zone show. This is Dr. Brian Brown. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on this beautiful Thursday. Depression and anxiety can kick your butt, and it can make you feel like you've literally fallen off of a wall, been broken into a million pieces, and even worse, that no one or nothing can seem to put you back together again. I know. I've been there. So what can we do about it? Stay tuned as we dive into this topic in today's show, and we'll find out. We all remember the nursery rhyme about Humpty Dumpty, right? It was a sad day for poor old Humpty, falling off the wall and then being broken into a million pieces, and no one could seem to get him put back together again. It kind of sounds like a lot of people's journeys who struggle with depression and anxiety. At least it does to me from a personal and professional standpoint. How about it? Does your depression and anxiety journey sound a lot like Humpty Dumpty's story? Have you had more than your fair share of great falls? And despite your best efforts and despite the best efforts of modern medicine, you just can't seem to get all the pieces put together again. That was my story over 25 years ago. I was Humpty Dumpty, and it's been the story of countless clients I've had the distinct pleasure of helping through the years. Humpty Dumpty's story is familiar. Personally, I was a mess. Living through 16 years of depression and anxiety and experiencing the horrors of what I call trial and terror of one medication regimen after another. For me, it was a total of 9 different medication trials in total. Now, why doesn't modern medicine seem to have the answers when it comes to depression and anxiety treatment or resolution, for that matter? Personally, I think it boils down to the fact that we are looking in the wrong places. And yes, I said places, plural. You see, for decades now, literally over a half of a century, modern medicine has viewed depression and anxiety through one lens: the lens of the neurotransmitter theory. Now, neurotransmitters are the chemicals in your brain that regulate different brain functions, such as experiencing happiness, joy, sadness, fear, anger, stress, and anxiety. But the problem is that the focus has been way too narrow. Just a few months ago, some of the top researchers in the field of mental health neuroscience or brain science published evidence that the neurotransmitter theory has been wrong all along. Now, this is the theory that says the mood regulation chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine are solely responsible for the symptoms associated with depression and anxiety. So for 50 years, we've gotten it wrong. Kind of crazy to think about, isn't it? I mean, think of all the countless medications that have wrongly been prescribed to quote unquote treat depression and anxiety. Now, before I get any hate mail, I'm fully aware that some prescription medications may be helpful for some people. However, for nearly every success story there's been with a prescription medication, there are 1 or 2 stories that weren't so successful. And here's the rub: we need a new lens to look through when it comes to dealing with depression and anxiety. And I would add that we need a lens that can look at multiple potential sources for where the depression and anxiety comes from. Most reasonable people would happily admit that the human body is fairly complex. I mean, there are millions, if not billions and trillions of metabolic and chemical processes in play at any one given time throughout your body. So why would we relegate the treatment of depression and anxiety only to a few neurotransmitters, unless it was potentially for improving the bottom line of a Fortune 500 company somewhere? This is the reason I left traditional practice and went into functional medicine. I felt like I was pushing pills that really didn't work, and it just quite frankly felt dirty to me. At the time, I couldn't quite explain it, but it just felt dirty. Now, with all of this in mind, I would like for you to imagine for a moment a world where Humpty Dumpty did not have to experience a fall, nor would he have to live in a world where he was broken into a million pieces, nor would he be relegated to a world where he couldn't be put back together again. Here's the good news. A world like this is possible. It simply takes a new lens through which to view the depression and anxiety world. Have you ever been out in nature, or maybe even in your own home, and you saw something maybe out of the corner of your eye that was odd or out of place, maybe even scared you or rattled you a little bit? Then once you changed your view and you got a new perspective, you were able to see it for what it was: simply a pile of debris, a stray piece of clothing, or a weird shadow. This change in perspective is what I'm talking about. It's a perspective that can give us a world that we dream of, a world where the horrors of mental illness do not exist, a world where we don't have the messiness of falls or being put together again and again and again. And if we really desire to change our perspective, I believe that we can even identify the tendency for depression and anxiety and intervene on these tendencies years, even decades before they reared their ugly heads. But how? How can we identify the tendency toward depression and anxiety that early? Better yet, how can we intervene on them years or decades ahead of time? The answer that I'll reveal to you in a moment, I believe, will be the largest paradigm shift in global health and wellness since Alexander Fleming discovered the penicillin injection in 1928. We have the technology to make it happen, but it's just not mainstream yet. It will require an up-leveling of thinking for mankind, much less the medical field in general, and it'll be the same up-leveling we've been doing for years. Let me explain that to you. In the early 18th century, no one would have imagined that man could fly. But in September of 1783, the Montgolfier brothers of France proved the world wrong when they flew the first hot air balloon. And in the late 18th century, no one could have imagined any other form of land travel except by horse and wagon, at least not until the steam engine train arrived on the scene in 1804. And another paradigm shift occurred on December 17th, 1903, when the Wright brothers proved that man could fly with wings like a bird. And still other paradigm shifts seized the imaginations of mankind with the arrival of the gas engine automobile, the modern industrialized factory, the personal computer, mobile phones, GPS, electric cars, and now driverless cars. So here's the answer for changing our depression and anxiety perspective, changing our lens. The subconscious brain consumes a tremendous amount of energy and does most of the body's heavy lifting. Under the right circumstances, it is prone to becoming overtaxed, stressed out, if you will, so that we developed what I've come to name a moody brain. Now, what is a moody brain? It doesn't mean that you have a depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder or attention deficit disorder. Although these official labels may certainly contain the hallmark characteristics for some people of what a moody brain entails, a moody brain simply means that there's a potential brain-body connection to what's going on right now. And there's a residual brain-body connection that's hidden, latent, and poised to reemerge under periods of physical or emotional stress. Many of us go through life with a moody brain, and the solution has been to take prescription medications or participate in cognitive therapy, or possibly even pursue alternative modalities that find and treat quote unquote root causes. After being electrocuted at age 5 and misdiagnosed for over 40 years with night terrors that turned out to be a cardiac arrhythmia that caused my heart to stop over 14,600 times. Yeah, astronomical number, right? I'm intimately familiar with moody brain symptoms such as poor attention, concentration, and focus, sadness, anxiety, brain fog, weight gain, and immune dysfunction. The battle was real for me. I gained up to 390 pounds. I had adrenal fatigue. I had hormone imbalances, developed Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition. And as I've already shared, I was on 9 different antidepressants over a 16-year period. These challenges pushed me into functional medicine and out of traditional medicine. But even with my new functional medicine skills, I couldn't find the complete healing that I desired. It just left me even more frustrated and dare I say helpless feeling. That's when I discovered DNA profiling. And as I began to explore the power of DNA profiling, I found out that understanding the makeup of your DNA is truly the foundational root cause I'd been looking for. The coding, if you will, for how I respond to the internal environment of our body and the external environment of our world. Up until the time of that discovery, I relied on my psychiatric and functional medicine training. And from those limited lenses, it was easy to assume that the root cause of my moody brain was from an electrocution at age 5 that disrupted my neurotransmitters in my brain and got them out of balance. Or maybe it was from my heart stopping 14,600 times over a 40-year period due to a misdiagnosis of night terrors. Or maybe it was due to the massive amount of adrenaline I was being exposed to when my body would jumpstart my heart back. Or maybe it was the rebound elevation in cortisol that followed the high adrenaline states that I was being subjected to. Or maybe it was the adrenal burnout that came as a consequence of the excessive demand on my adrenal glands. Or last one, it was the thyroid hormone and immune imbalances that resulted from all the adrenal burnout and adrenal fatigue. All these assumptions were not necessarily inherently wrong, but they weren't fully right either. You see, my DNA superseded them all. It was and still is the building blocks for who I am and how I respond to my environment. And the same holds true for you. You see, I figured out how to correct my own DNA imbalances, and I don't no longer have to deal with fatigue, brain fog, depression, anxiety, immune dysfunction, weight gain, or poor focus and concentration. And I've been off of prescription medicines for well over a decade now. With that knowledge, I perfected a system to help my clients as well, help them do the very same thing that I was able to do for myself. And it all starts with, yep, you guessed it, checking your DNA first. So I'll leave you with this. A genetics first approach or strategy in functional medicine allows you to get relief in your symptoms, whether they be depression related or anxiety related. It allows you to get relief faster in days or weeks compared to months or years. It also sets up the other alternative medicine strategies, if you so choose to use them, to have longer lasting residual effects and impact on your life. Take, for example, Jane, a client of mine for over 3 years who came to me with a host of moody brain symptoms, seasonal depression, persistent anxiety, immune dysfunction, and weight management issues. She was diagnosed with a non-specific autoimmune condition that no specialist could quite seem to pinpoint. For 10 years, her modus operandi was to develop an acute respiratory illness, such as influenza, 3 to 4 times per year, followed by a relapse of shingles. This resulted in a depressive spiral and worsening anxiety, as well as weight struggles and weight gain relapses. She was actively in the throes of one of these episodes when we very first met. Now, after gene profiling Jane, I immediately began addressing her DNA imbalances. And guess what? Her issues began to clear within 3 weeks. And by the 12th week, she explained to me that she felt better than she had felt in 20 some odd years, with no complaints of any moody brain issues at all. And now let's fast forward to today, 3.5 years later of working with Jane. She's had no respiratory illnesses, not even the infamous Cupid virus that we've been dealing with for the past few years. And all of her other moody brain issues have remained fully resolved as well. Now, if you're battling with depression and anxiety right now, or depression or anxiety, and you're over 40 and you'd like to feel like you can, or you do feel like you can relate to Humpty Dumpty, you're not alone. There's a faster way to get the results that you desire, the results that you want, by starting with the foundation of your DNA. And once we understand your DNA and the imbalances that are there, we can put a plan in place to correct those imbalances. Now, clinically, I see people who struggle in areas like this get results like Jane in days or weeks instead of months or years. So if you're interested in knowing more, message me on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Brian G. Brown. I'll be glad to show you what I'm talking about and discuss how you can get your brain back on track. And if you're the self-starter type person who really wants to know more about DNA profiling and you want to take steps toward going deeper in your healing journey, I've got the perfect solution for you. I created a short self-paced program to walk you through it. It's called the Gene Hack Bootcamp. Now, I know boot camp as a term sounds like a lot of work. It's not. You can complete it in one sitting. You could complete it in 2 sittings, or you could do it over the course of 5 to 7 days. It's totally up to you. You're working at your own pace, And there's not a lot of things to do in the boot camp other than sit back and soak in the information and let me show you which genes are most important to check, how we determine which genes to focus on first. And I'll also share some base level supplements that we use with almost every single client that has genes profiled, because these are the things that come up most commonly as needing to be used to correct these imbalances. So if you're that self-starter person, go to drbriangBrown.com/gene hack/boot camp, and you can enroll for free right now. I'm not sure how long it's going to be free, but right now the boot camp is free and you can enroll there. Tune in next Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time for our next In the Zone segment, where I'll be sharing the latest research and my insights about that research as it relates to optimizing your mood, optimizing your brain, optimizing your physical and emotional wellness journey, and most importantly of all, optimizing your DNA. Most informed, most trusted, and most grateful that you spent this time with us today. Until next time, stay in the zone. I'm Dr. Brian Brown.